Is Doom64 still worth playing? I could end the video right now and say yes, but first, before you click away, you must ask yourself, if you played it on N64 upon original release date, or were you in the other 64% of the population who just assumed it was another port of the PC Doom games and thus just skipped it? After all, there were a lot of games on N64 with the 64 suffix ranging from first-party Mario games to third-party stuff like Harvest Moon, Quake, Ridge Racer, and of course, Doom. I was one of the people who assumed it was a port, so this review will really all be from the perspective of a lifelong Doom fan that has played almost every Doom game currently released, minus stuff like Doom RPG. When I first found out that Doom64 was its own thing, I couldn't have been happier really, because after years of playing the originals to death, and even loving the reboot games to death, I felt like there was one long-lost official Doom game just out there waiting to be played. Bought that shit faster than you can say outsourced Doom game. Well, the easiest way to begin this review is by talking about the flaws, and really only one comes to mind when thinking about the flaws, and that is the fact that there's no level select screen here, like in Doom 1 and 2 ports, or Quake Remastered. With Night Dive handling the Quake Remaster using the same Kex engine, you think it'd be easy to add a level select screen. But really this is only a minor annoyance at best, because when you beat a level, the end screen will present you with a 12-digit password for that level. So either A, you gotta write that shit down, or B, use a bunch of the game's save slots so you're never really too far from a save point. And just for the sake of being selfish, I'd love for them to add a whole new free look mode, since we know the Kex engine is capable of it and it would work. I get that they're just staying authentic, but come on, make it an option. There's no reason to stay limited to one axis. Okay, and with all the flaws out of the way, I can now begin to explain why Doom64's gameplay easily stands on its own as uniquely great in the Doom franchise. The bulk of what you'll be doing here in Doom64 is the same as what you were doing back in Doom 1 and 2, except this time in the world of console limitations. So, what did Midway Studios do to keep the gameplay smooth, fun, and addicting? Well, it appears they trimmed all the potential Doom fat so that this version of the game could do what it did best: present you with maps that were generally smaller than the previous game's maps, but still very intricate, then cut back on what they may have deemed more hardware-intensive or expendable enemies, or maybe all that information just couldn't fit on the N64 cartridge. It's kind of unclear. There is other small changes in the gameplay you'll notice, like the running doesn't feel as floaty or as slidey as the first two Doom games, so you kind of have to adjust yourself to Doom64 guys stop on a dime style of momentum. Also, the shotguns don't have a reload animation, they just kind of cock back for a second. This time there seems to be a lot more traps, which makes me wonder if they took inspiration from Quake and all of its crushing ceiling traps and arrow traps. Either way, it's a welcome addition, and I wish they had more of these traps in the levels because it really does add more depth. There is some other gameplay changes based on the effects of them tweaking the id Tech engine to allow for certain scripting of set pieces or level alteration. The actual shooting here still feels just as good as it did in Doom 1 and 2. No real room for improvement here. There's still no jump button yet, but that hardly matters here since they built any platforming with the running speed in mind, so if there's a place that looks unreachable, it probably is. When you're not shooting demons, you'll be finding keycards and hitting switches to navigate the levels. Oftentimes you'll run into puzzles, some of which might seem dickish at first, but these are usually all pretty fun and don't feel like busy work at all, so thumbs up there. There's not much to speak of in the way of pickups, but you will obviously have your health, armor, ammo, and the occasional goggles or god mode. With all that being said, you can expect everything else to be covered in its own section coming up. And the section naturally coming up next is the enemies in Doom 64, who you'll be blasting away at from start to finish. And let me tell you what, they removed a few of my favorite demons from before, but as a consolation prize, I do have to say that the new roster for Doom 64 really come together nicely and have a good cohesive style. You still have your zombie men who go down extremely easy and now just kind of look like a action figure. You still have the imps that are constantly throwing their fire mixtape at you. You still got our well-liked and not at all annoying flying friends, the Cacodemon and Pain Elemental, popping up all through your journey. Sadly, the Lost Soul somehow weaseled its way into this version of the game. The redesigns here are all admittedly 90s extreme with the hair added to the Pain Elemental and the extra rips and chains in the clothes. You still got the Pinkies, who in my opinion have never looked madder than they do right here, along with their dark fuzzy silhouette Spectre lookalikes, both of which go down very easily. The Arachnotrons. These things are just as fun to take down here as they were in Doom 2, except now they shoot 2 streams of plasma at you and don't make as awesome of a death noise when they die. The Mancubuses make their self-conscious return here, rocking the utility belt. Fashion aside though, this asshole still fires 3 volleys of rockets at you, so keep dancing every time he's around. The Baron of Hell and the Hell Knights are still here, and look the most like they did before, even down to the pink and green plasma power differences. These guys aren't hard at all, but they can easily drain your health if you get careless. And the Cyber Demon is exactly as hard as you remember. I wish we got to face off against him more often in the game though, because there's constant pressure on you, and with usually one shot being able to kill the player, it makes every encounter feel super intense. All the enemies in the game look fantastic, and relatively close to their prequel game counterparts. Midway did an awesome job of digitizing the sprites, or whatever it is they did to make them look this good. Oh, and the Mother Demon was just as much of an afterthought from me as it was from the developers, so I'll just say that hard does not always equal fun. In a lot of instances it does, but sometimes it's just bullshit. Also looking amazing in the game are the guns. They have done a variation of redesigns here on the guns, but you do get all the classics from Doom, now with their own 64 look to them. They function almost exactly the same as they did in previous games. Your pistol is a last resort gun that I wouldn't wish on anyone. The single barrel shotgun is an all-around great weapon, and if you don't mind this bigger spread, then you'll love the double barrel super shotgun because it packs it. Well, I don't need to tell you why you love the super shotgun. The minigun is now enhanced to look a bit meaner and more 90s, but I think it does actually still look quite cool, and I can't deny shooting this thing is crazy. It feels way more powerful than it should, and maybe that's due to the added screen shake when firing, but regardless, this is one of the best weapons in the game. The rocket launcher looks the same as it always did, but now it seems to shoot faster. I haven't crunched the numbers, but the firing as well as the speed of the rocket both seem to be faster, and in this case, better. The plasma gun got a great redesign, so now it actually looks like a gun instead of some kind of robotic anteater circumcision foreskin problem gone wrong. Sorry, OG Doom, I always thought the plasma gun looked kinda stupid. The weapon itself, though, shreds with a high rate of fire and plasma projectiles that deal a decent amount of damage. Lastly, the BFG makes its mandatory appearance and works similar to how it does in other Doom games. Being honest, though, I don't know the physics behind this one, but the gun primarily destroys most everything in its path with 1 or 2 hits. Still a great weapon to pull out last minute and end up prevailing because of. They also include an exclusive to Doom64 gun called the Unmaker, which is basically a laser gun that can be powered up if you collect all the demon keys during the story missions, I guess you could call them. It's a good gun, especially when powered up, but for some reason I never really used it. Kinda like when we got the laser gun in Quake, which I also never really used. And lastly, oh yeah, they added a second blade to the chainsaw because why wouldn't they? It's awesome. Anyway, my point is Midway didn't have to go above and beyond or anything here with these guns, but they did at least nail the essentials, so I gotta give them credit where it's due. What I was welcome to changing, though, was the graphics and the look of the levels. id was amazing at making iconic sprites, textures, and maps, so it would be hard for anybody to top that, especially on a console with limitations. So, the levels and world of Doom64 are made in true 3D, whereas the enemies and guns are sprites, which gives the game a very unique look. Also, the levels of Doom64 are a lot more colorful this time around. You'll see deeply saturated colored lighting leaking from every corner of each level, similar to Quake 64. It actually really adds to the atmosphere when you get some crazy red mood lighting, creepiness of a dimly lit yellow room, or the worst event in all recorded history, the green flame dimension. Lastly, on the graphics is just that the color adds a lot to the identity and the gameplay of Doom 64 because OG Dooms were all gray, brown, green, and red, but Doom 64 is like a dark rainbow in game form, and it's beautiful. The levels of Doom 64 are among some of the most fun and consistent Doom levels I've ever played. In Doom 2, there's Doom levels I almost always skip because they can annoy the shit out of me, but I can honestly say, despite a couple puzzles that try to fuck with you here, I can happily start a new game every time I play Doom 64, and it feels great. The difficulty curve is really well done in this game. The levels are usually in some kind of evil tech base, castle structure, military fort, or generally any kind of fortress that can support a moat around the outside. Also, just like any other Doom game, there is tons of secrets to find that will help you no matter what difficulty you're playing on. The soundtrack, or should I say lack thereof, is made up mostly of ambient noises and dark-sounding tones, punctuated by monster noises and environmental sound effects. And sorry, Bobby Prince fans, there is really no fast, fun MIDI metal songs here, so what you get is more like what they did in Quake. In fact, it's the same composer, a Mr. Aubrey Hodges. It's great for atmosphere, but bad for iconic theme songs. The sound of everything else in the game is very well done. The guns sound better, the plasma gun in particular. The effects sound crispier, and the redone monster noises sound meaner and like actual monsters. My favorite is the new Hell Knight death noise as he crumples to pieces. And how does Doom64 perform? Well, the answer is phenomenally. We get 4K visuals at 60 FPS, and it all feels great in the midst of gameplay battle. As you would expect from a game this old, it didn't experience any slowdown, performance issues, or bugs. Something else impressive with Doom64 is that it never crashed once, whereas playing Doom 1 and 2 on console, I constantly experienced crashes. So obviously Night Dive is doing something right here. Oh, and the price. This one is usually on sale all the time for something ridiculous like $3.99 Canadian, which is cheap as hell, and even when not on sale, I can't see it being over $10, and I would say the game is easily worth way more than $10 just in terms of pure fun value alone. If you are a fan of Doom, especially classic Doom, this is a must-buy. You will love it. I have no idea how Midway were able to make a game so close to the originals with enough of its own identity and still have it turn out as great as it did. I really wish id did this with more studios to see what kind of crazy Doom games we could have had, but I guess that's what mods are good for, and there are plenty of those. So, looping back to the question in the title of this video, should you still play Doom64 in 2023? The answer is a saturated hell yes. If you love or hate Doom64, let me know in the comments. Also, were you like me and unfortunately missed the game at release? And lastly, and hypothetically, if id Software said their next Doom game was going to be a sprite-based game, would you be as excited as I would? Thanks again for watching.